This video is going to demonstrate how to read items from a data file. So I'm going to read from a data file into a structure. And I'm not going to necessarily recommend that this is a process that you use. It's kind of tricky, but I will show you how this particular program works. So first of all, we need to do pound include fstream. That's going to tell us that we're going to be working with files. It's the same drink structure that we used in our previous videos, and I haven't changed the display method at all. What you do need to do when you create a data file, or when you read from a data file, if you take a look in your textbook, section 5, there are some steps that they recommend that you do. Those steps are outlined on page 287 in your textbook. I will briefly outline them here. Basically, it's one is to make sure you have your header files. Include the header file that you need. Step 2, and let me change the type of comment I'm going to use here. Step 2 is to define a file stream object to be able to access and work back and forth with the file. Open the file, work with the file, and last but not least, you have to make sure that you close the file. And again, if you want to reference that, it's on page 287 in your textbook for your reference. Okay? So if we scroll down, I declared my file stream object here. I called it input file. I'm still using the array of drinks. I am no longer using this for my initialization, so I'm going to delete all of that. And then I'm going to tell it that I'm going to work with a data file. And previously I had went to resources and I added a new item. And that new item was a utility item, and it was a text file. And that's how I got my data file. I just named it data, but I could do something like drinks just to show you how it shows up under here under your resources. My data file is organized as follows. The name followed by a number for the drink, a name, a number, a name, a number, etc. I created it this way because the way that I'm reading in the data, if we take a look, I'm reading in the data by first doing a couple of things. I open the file. I then check to see if the file opens successfully. That's what this line of code does here. So it checks for successful file opening. And if it did not open successfully, then we produce an error message in my else statement. And we just say that there was an error opening the file. You should always, always, always do that when you're working with a data file. So there should be some type of error trapping. If the file opens successfully, then I'm reading in the data items using input file. And what input file does is it just reads the first item or the first thing that it comes across, and I was using drinks, and then I wanted to make sure it did drinks and then the amount, so I'm reading in 2 items. So, and notice that I'm using, when I access the drinks, in order to put them into the array of drinks, I'm doing index, bracket, dot, and then this one's the name. So I'm putting it directly into my array of drinks. This right here, honestly, was just to see if the method was working. So I'm just kind of doing an echo. It's called an echo check right here. I'm doing an echo check to see if it's doing what I think it's doing. And then I have to increase my index because I am loading it into an array. I close the file, and then I use my same display values that I did before. I'm going to go ahead and run this to see how it works. And so my reading my data, Coke, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, etc. is working. The inventory is such and such, and so it looked like it worked successfully. However, I am going to show you some of the errors I got before I completed this process, and most of that has to deal with how this data is read in. So if I go back to the data, and let me add Mountain Dew in here as an example. So in other words, I'm reading in a string, and that contains more than one item, and you can see that throws everything off. Because I'm not using a getLine method, if I take a look here, I am only using input. It only picks up one item, and it automatically breaks when there is a space. So in my data file, if I took a look at my data, there's a space between mountain and dew, so it did not do that. That's also why I had the Coke and the 20 on separate lines. If I put them back on the same line, I'm going to see if that would actually work, so I could maybe create my data file like this. Let's just try that and see if it would work. And it looks like that will work. It was not working before because I had spaces in my strings. If you want to read in strings, the way that I'm doing this is really not the most efficient, because I should use a getLine method in order to get the whole entire string. Otherwise, I can't actually get the full name like Mountain Dew or Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi. And so there are some limitations. It's not that you can't do this. There are just some other methods that you need to do if you are going to read in from a data file and read in strings. So if you want to be reading in strings from a data file, let me know, and I will direct you in the right direction to look up those resources.